Welcome. I'm so glad that you can join me here today, 201. This is video number 174, excerpts 534, 35, 2 pages out of 852 from the novel TheSovereignLight, a course in metaphysical spirituality, where we do these practices, each lesson that might offer samples that can be extended into sermons and further expanded into workshops in guiding us through this ascension process and the evolution and transcendence of each and every upgrade that we take in when we work through and do our shadow work, and the many tools that we can gain throughout these lessons to provide within our toolbox and value our biological network and imagination and the things that we create and are able, this potential, this divine potential, this infinite potential that is us. So what if all the guilt and that has created arrogance for its cure decides to wipe clean from the mind? The what if. Is that of a magical genie waiting to come out of its bottle and to serve the self with the many choices for its wishes that the self can and will accept to bring about salvation for the genie and free its way to liberation. Whatever we accept, we deserve. Whatever we can possibly imagine, we deserve. Only when we are able to accept it. And when we do that, we change, and the world around us changes. And so take a few deep breaths in, ground, meaning find your center still point, and release all anxiety, release everything that's external, trying to take away and pull you apart, and just bring all that back into center. Pull it in and just let go of all the distractions and start breathing through your heart space. Open it up, still your mind, embrace the new day. And you can opt to have your eyes closed or open and repeat these words that come together to form a thought and pattern into throughout your day to activate, work through, and help guide you through ascension. I can ascend by releasing perspectives that bind me to enslavement, and with it of the many contracts from the world the many it has binded. I can ascend by releasing perspectives that bind me to enslavement, and with it of the many contracts from the world, the many it has binded. I can ascend by releasing perspectives that bind me to enslavement, and with it of the many contracts from the world, the many it has binded. Pride, it has its place where humility stands firm to greet it humbly, the cruelty of its kindness. To resist the function of the soul's mission for a petty stance that drains it feebly, and to survive to reach the level of its ripeness and then its frailty, to recycle once again into the procreative cycle, to shrivel up and die. Is that but one of many answers that the mind can conceive to confuse with, and from what the self might prefer otherwise in the follow of its heart? We get put into conflicts of interest, and a lot of the times conflict between the heart and mind, where it feels good, it feels right, but your mind is saying otherwise, your program is saying otherwise, that it's not right, it's not the right thing to do. And what do? We go with what makes sense. And we always go with the mind. And when we go with the heart, we find that we've become fearless. When we go with the mind, we become obedient from respecting fear. The fantasize of the mind can then find comfort to take the part and by another aspect, extending from the outside in, claiming to know it well from its imagination. The soul will always know the self, and from its inner light, this consciousness, it must trust to hold it in contentment for being in the way it is. A playful little child or a very hurt one. Look at me, oh, I'm working for the TTC. No, honestly, it's a kind of lifestyle that not everybody can bear. It's all of how much of a level of desensitization we become rewarded for that. The less we feel, the more we become awarded. The more we feel, oh my gosh, it takes one empath to another to really know what I'm referring to here. So guilt could give it too much pride to think of being small and push it forward with great arrogance. What we abuse, and mostly our power, this disconnect, we find whatever it is that we're abusing comes back with guilt. when we recognize we have done so. And so it doesn't always have to be physical abuse. That's just something very, at the very, it really has to hit you with a 2x4 before it gets there. And so there's emotional abuse, and that's one of the most important ones. And we catch it before it gets into physical abuse. And the neglect and denial that brings about disease and discomfort and illnesses, to name a few, all in the name of desensitization that we value over and reward. So the arrogance creates a mask, and from which to identify the self in its defense, when really behind it is a frightened little child. And yes, it could be frigid too when extremely traumatized, like PTSD. And that from previous experience, it held a punishable performance for expressing of itself authentically. You're not to even question authority. You do as you're told. And the more desensitized you are, the more rewarded you become. If you, by any way, show any feelings or remorse or expressing of your authenticity, then you become punished and guilt-ridden, and especially when you lash out, because there's only so much we can oppress and depress, and it comes out. And that's when we are so disconnected and out of control that we have to seek out disciplinary measures from the external world to reprimand us. So I can ascend by releasing perspectives that bind me to enslavement, and with it of the many contracts from the world, the many it has binded. Like a warrior's mask, it hides the light, and all ready to defend for its survival, to exist by drawing down its boundaries, and so to be respected by its peers. Oh, how brave! Like we were in previous mentioning, what one might see as bravery, another might interpret as a cowardly act. And so what one might see as a hero, another might reinterpret as a fool. And so forth, and the many variables in between. And so the fierce competition with its many aspects, playing out the role from their very own physical encasements with each other, and as they prey upon all life and the world, profoundly proud of this consumption, and no one nor nothing will cast aside the rank that holds it down dearly. What has the self become then but a puppet to its master? The master from within and the nurturer are today's mystery guests that the self must take some time to connect with. In the morning or before you start your day, just start to take these words in, this thought formation from these words, and say them out loud. I can ascend by releasing perspectives that bind me to enslavement, and with it of the many contracts from the world, the many it has binded. And with eyes closed, then, find the disconnect, and for today's purpose, the meaning of the nurturer, to help restore the trust the inner child had felt, and in its abandonment from self-denial, it's screaming out all over the place on the external, right here and now. The master from within is the wise advisor that the fight or flight warrior must learn from, and to set the boundaries that best describe for the self its purpose. And just breathe that in for a moment. Focus, and throughout the day, all the many times, the use for assertiveness. Really dive deep and into its meaning for integration, that it screams out in its need for help. And the more it screams, the more it's hurting. The purpose is to discover the harmony of the inner workings of relationships and how they wish to engage with one another, and that can best reflect to correspond outwardly with. Notice these sub-personalities reflected and impressed upon your world that come right back at you and have you engaging with them. Or confrontational or not, how you wish to engage with them or not. And I will leave you with today's blessing that you may take in. Let it absorb into your mind. And say these words. Think them. Let them find meaning and believe in their truth. And when you come to this realization of awareness, then it can start to activate and work its way. I can ascend by releasing perspectives that bind me to enslavement, and with it, of the many contracts from the world, the many it has binded. How to engage and form relationships without these kind of binds. This is what we have to work through and leverage and just allow ourselves to enlighten from it all. I can ascend by releasing perspectives that bind me to enslavement, and with it, of the many contracts from the world, the many it has binded. How do these words make you feel? And how does it change throughout your day, these feelings? Or is it the same feeling when you repeat these words that you get? And whatever feeling you put to back these words with will commence into your reality and create anew. I can ascend by releasing perspectives that bind me to enslavement, and with it, of the many contracts from the world, the many it has binded. Feel the relief. And don't be too concerned about how others might feel or impose this view on them. Rather, how you feel and how it changes you is the only thing that matters. I can ascend by releasing perspectives that bind me to enslavement, and with it, of the many contracts from the world, the many it has binded. I can ascend by releasing perspectives that bind me to enslavement, and with it, of the many contracts from the world, the many it has binded. I can ascend by releasing perspectives that bind me to enslavement, and with it, of the many contracts from the world, the many it has binded.